Stories of Life with John, Huey, and the Lion and Kermit.
Hi boys and girls, how are you? You know, I remember reading something from the Bible that went like this. In a book written by a man called Isaiah, he writes about one day in the future where the wolf and the lamb will lie down together, where the leopard and the goat will be as friends, and where the lion and the calf will be in the same place together, and they won't be fighting. That's a time that I really look forward to. At the moment, those kind of animals don't get on very well. But one day, the Bible says that they will. I'm looking forward to that day. You might be wondering where Super Ted and Truzo are tonight. Well, they're having a little bit of a rest, but I've got my friends Huey and the Lion and Kermit, and they all seem to be getting along really well. The reason I have Huey and the Lion here with me is to just show you that these animals one day will get along really well together. But the story I'm telling you about is called Androcles and the Lion, and that's why the Lion is here with me tonight. So a long time ago, there was a very powerful empire, a world empire. It ruled the whole world. And the place where all of the power and authority resided was in the city of Rome. So Rome was the city that ruled the whole world. And there was a man that lived in Rome, and he was called the emperor. And the man who ruled Rome was the man who ruled the world. Now, the emperor was a very powerful man, and oftentimes, if he was not happy with someone, he would make them become slaves. Or worse, he might even kill them. Some of those emperors were not very nice people. As I said, this story is called Androcles and the Lion. Now, this man, Androcles, was one of the Roman slaves. Now, he was a good slave. He always worked very, very hard, tried his very best, did everything his master asked him to do, and even more. But for some unhappy reason, the master that Androcles had was very cruel, very rough, not at all nice to Androcles. Even though Androcles tried his very best at all times, the master was never ever kind to him. Sometimes he went without food, and sometimes without water, and sometimes he was beaten very badly. Androcles was very patient and tried his very best to ignore that and to just be kind instead. But sooner or later, Androcles got thinking and wondering, how could he keep living like this with such a cruel master? Soon enough, he decided that it was better to be free than remain a slave to this master. So one night, when it was very dark and everyone was asleep, Androcles crept very quietly and snuck out very quietly out of the house that he was in. He went out into the street and he quietly walked down the street until he got to the edge of the township. And as soon as he got to the edge, he ran as fast as he could to get away from his master's house as quickly as he could. He ran and he stumbled through the dark all night until the morning. When the morning light came, he was many, many miles away from his master's home. He continued walking. He couldn't see anyone or any homes or any towns anywhere. He was way out in the back of beyond, nowhere. He continued walking for days and days, and he got more and more tired. Until he had to stop. He had no food, and he thought at one stage he was going to starve. But he did come to this nice big cave out in the wilderness. And he decided that would be a really good place to stop. So Androcles crawled inside the big cave, found himself a nice place to lie down, and went to sleep. Soon after he went to sleep, Androcles woke up with a big fright because there was a big roar. And he shot bolt upright, looking around. What was that sound? Where was it coming from? And as he stared at the entrance to the cave, he saw a big, big lion standing in the middle of the entrance. He didn't know what to do. He was very, very frightened. But the lion didn't come pouncing at him. The lion just looked at the man and then quietly lay down. Androcles was surprised, but he was relieved. He didn't move for a little while whilst he watched the lion. As he looked closely at the lion, he noticed that he didn't seem very happy. He was kind of uncomfortable, and little growls were coming from him. He looked a little more closely at the lion and noticed that one of his paws looked very, very swollen. The lion looked unhappy and uncomfortable. Androcles watched him closely for a little while. When he saw that the lion was not looking dangerous or fearsome towards him, he decided to get a little bit closer. So he crept a little bit closer, being careful to watch the lion and see what kind of reaction he gave. But the lion just lay there. Soon he began licking the paw that was very, very swollen. And as Androcles crept a little closer each moment, he could see, as he grew closer, that the paw was bleeding. Oh, that didn't look very comfortable for the lion. The lion continued to be fairly calm about the presence of Androcles as he grew closer and closer. When he got very close, he could see that the lion's paw had a great big thorn in it. Oh, that looked sore, Androcles thought. I wonder if I could possibly help the lion, but they're such big beasts and a little bit scary. But Androcles very carefully crept a little bit closer and a little bit closer until he could reach out with his hand towards the paw that was sore. To his surprise, even though the lion looked at him, he didn't growl, he didn't look fierce. In fact, he held up his paw as if to say, "Could you help me? Could you help me? My foot is very, very sore." Androcles, a little bit hesitant, reached out and the lion took his paw and put it in his hand. Androcles knew what he had to do. Although he wasn't sure what the reaction of the lion would be, but very carefully he grabbed the thorn between his forefinger and his thumb very tightly and pull! He pulled it out quickly, and the lion gave a bit of a growl, but he didn't get angry or attack Androcles. Instead, he just looked relieved. The lion put his head between his paws and just went to sleep. Androcles wasn't sure what to do next, so he just sat there very calmly. He watched and waited beside the lion, and after a little while, the lion woke up. The next thing he did, you almost wouldn't believe it could happen. The lion leant over towards Androcles and started licking his feet first and then licking his hands, as if to say, thank you for making me feel so much better. Oh, Androcles felt so relieved, and he was no longer frightened of the lion at all. That night, as dark came, the man Androcles and the lion lay down beside each other and went to sleep. In the morning they both woke up, but the lion headed out of the cave. When he came back that day, he brought back some food with him to share with Androcles. For the next 3 years, Androcles and the lion became very close friends. Androcles never had a friend like this lion, or anyone to be so friendly towards him in his life. For 3 years they would go out hunting together and looking in different places and discovering different localities together. And each night they would come back to the cave and they would lie down beside each other, keeping each other company, keeping each other warm through the winters. This happened for a very long time, until something unfortunate befell Androcles and the lion. One day, the Roman soldiers came from the city and the township from where Androcles had lived. They were looking for runaway slaves. And if you were caught as a runaway slave, it was not a very good future for you. Unfortunately, for Androcles, they found the cave that he was staying in. Even though the lion was not there, they took hold of Androcles and they put him in shackles and manacles and they took him back to Rome. Androcles was very frightened because he knew what would happen to most runaway slaves. Either they were beaten very cruelly and returned to their master if their master wanted them, or else they would be executed as part of a sport in a big building called the Colosseum, where hundreds of people went to watch. Unfortunately for Androcles, this was going to be his fate. The soldiers took him to the emperor. The emperor gave the command that Androcles was to be taken to the Colosseum and placed in the arena to fight with the wild animals. Usually they were wild lions that they kept underneath the floor of the Colosseum and released them at the right time. On the appointed day, the soldiers took Androcles and placed him in the middle of the Colosseum's arena. They gave him a knife to protect himself. But what good is a knife against a hungry, wild, big lion? A man could not fight off a lion at all. They're too strong. Androcles stood in the middle, being very nervous and very frightened. There was a huge crowd in the Colosseum that day. Spectators filled all the seats. Terrible sport. Soon enough, you could hear the lions roaring above the call and the cheers of the people that were in the Colosseum. They were not happy lions. They were kept in these cells, no food, little water. They became very hungry and very angry. Soon the time came for the soldiers to open the gates to let the lion out. And there was a great big roar as everybody watched, and Androcles braced himself, holding his tiny little knife to protect himself from the angry, hungry lion. The lion bounded out from the entrance to the cells below and raced across the arena, heading towards Androcles. Oh, no! And then, you wouldn't believe it, the lion stopped dead in his tracks. And he stared at the man, looked him up and down. Everyone in the arena went quiet. They watched and wondered what was happening. The lion now quietly and calmly walked up to Androcles. Androcles didn't know what was going to happen next. But the lion reached out and began licking Androcles' hands. Androcles suddenly realized who it was. It was his friend, the lion, that he had lived those 3 years in the cave with. Everyone was astonished. The soldiers were asking Androcles, "Androcles, what's going on? What's happening? Tell us." He turned to the soldiers and explained, "This is my friend, the lion whom I lived with in the wilderness for 3 long years. He is the only friend I have had in all my life, and he has found me again." Androcles took his arms and draped them around the lion's big neck as the lion rubbed his head against Androcles' face. They looked so happy together. The next moment, the crowd started cheering. They were so excited about what they had just seen. The emperor noticed that everyone was so happy. He was wondering what he should do next. Then the crowd called out and gave him the answer. They started yelling, "Let the man be free. Let him live, set him free. Let him live, set him free." Oh, the crowd was going wild. The emperor was listening and wondering what he should do next. Then the crowd started shouting, "And the lion, let him live, set him free. Let him live, set him free." When the emperor raised his hand and there was quiet, he made his decision. He made his announcement. And his announcement was to set Androcles and the lion free. The emperor brought Androcles into his presence and gave him some money and set him free and gave the lion to him as a gift. Both Androcles lived in Rome for many years afterwards. And whenever the people would see Androcles and the lion, they would say this, "There goes the lion, who has a friend in this man. And there goes the man who has a friend in this lion. And that's the story of Androcles and the lion. Here's a couple of questions for you. Do people always be kind to you when you're kind to them? What should you do if you're kind to someone, but they're not kind to you? I think it's always good to be kind. That's the way we get on with everyone else. And one day, sometime in the future, God has promised that we and the wild lions and the wild bears and all the animals will get along just beautifully together. I hope to see you next week with another wonderful story. See ya! And maybe Super Ted and Truzo will be back with some of their friends, perhaps.